Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Loda, Chairman and CEO of the MTA and the proud owner of the UL Carey Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. We're going to hear today from Governor Cuomo, Mayor Bloomberg, Secretary Napolitano, and the two United States senators and other elected officials. Immediately following the Secretary's comments, the Governor and the Mayor will be leaving for other commitments. Let me describe to you what the Governor and I saw on Monday night. Separately, we came down here. We didn't know we were coming down here. We ran into each other right up there on this roadway right up here. Where you are all standing right now, there were raging white rapid waters. The Hudson River crested and came roaring down into our tunnels. Both tubes of our tunnels are filled. They're filled with 43 million gallons of water. Each one is filled with 43 million gallons of water. It stretches 6,000 feet, over about a mile and a quarter of nothing but water. I will tell you what we saw was so extraordinary, I actually thought it was capable of providing hydropower. It was coming in with such great speed and with a roaring noise that you couldn't possibly imagine. And also try to imagine it was pitch black, the power was out in downtown, and this was what we saw. Let me tell you a little bit about the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel real quick so you can get an understanding. It opened in 1950. It goes underground, that's right, Senator, it does. There are two tubes. There are 4 tunnels all in total. It connects Manhattan and Brooklyn, as you all know, two of the most populated areas in the city of New York. It brings in $80 million of revenue every year, but most importantly, and it's critical to the economies of Brooklyn and Manhattan, 50,000 vehicles a day travel through this tunnel, and we're looking forward to getting it open as fast as we possibly can. With that, I would like to talk about the leadership and the inspirational leadership that the governor's had in providing for the MTA as well as all of New York as we're trying as hard as we can to get services back to New Yorkers so everything gets back to normal. No detail is too small. He's capable and does, with great efficiency, make very effective decisions on a quick basis, for which I very much appreciate. And he's provided all of us with the confidence necessary to know that we as New Yorkers will bounce back. We always do. We've got experience with disasters before. That type of spirit is the spirit that the governor is showing and the leadership that he's providing to all of us. With that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Governor Andrew Cuomo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First to Chairman Joe Loda, who has just been really done an amazing job in public service. Let's give him a round of applause for all the good work that he's done. It's a pleasure to be with my colleagues in government. It's a pleasure to welcome Secretary Janet Napolitano to New York. Madam Secretary, if we look a little wet and a little tired, we are, but we want you to know that we are as feisty as ever, Janet. But welcome to New York. You know, they say that sometimes when it comes to personalities, your greatest strength can be your greatest weakness. In some ways, that's true for cities also. What made this city and state was our proximity to the water. It was our port. It was the Hudson River. It was the Erie Canal. That's what made us. What made Manhattan was the engineering marvel of being able to build not just above ground, but below ground. How did you get so much done on this slim island? Because we build high and we build deep. That's the great strength. That becomes a great liability in the face of a storm. And that's what we have seen in a way we haven't seen in decades, if ever. The story that Joe tells about Monday night still gives me chills. We were right on that overpass, as he said. The water coming through here was 3, 4, 5 feet deep. The Hudson River came right across the West Side Highway. The East River was coming from that direction, was coming down this side. And the only question was, when does it end? Had the river crested? Because at one point you feared that you would just have submerged all of the battery. And it was that striking. It was also that frightening. It was dark. We then walked up to the ground zero site, and the same thing was happening at ground zero. So it was really a frightening situation. The good news is that there are a lot of people who want to help. And we need a lot of help because we're looking at the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel that needs to be pumped out. 1 mile long, that water that we've seen in that tunnel. And as massive an undertaking as the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel is, you have to times that by 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, right? You have the Homeland Tunnel, you have the Midtown Tunnel, you have subway tunnels that are still flooded, you have Con Ed vaults that are still flooded. And this is an engineering feat that we haven't undertaken before. So we do need the help. But the good news is the help has been coming. We have states calling from all around the country saying they want to be of help. We have people donating money. And most importantly, we have a lot of help and friendship coming from the federal government. It is a massive undertaking, but an undertaking requires a team. And what you've seen here in New York is a real team. The way you have a first baseman, second baseman, shortstop, and third baseman, you have the federal government, you have the state government, you have the local government, and you have the citizens of New York. And the citizens of New York have done just what they were supposed to do. They've shown strength, they've shown resilience, and they've shown compassion, the New York trademark. We want to applaud our federal partners who have been great. President Obama calls multiple times a day. Secretary Sebelius has called. Secretary Panetta has called. FEMA has been here just last night. FEMA worked with our National Guard. I'm going to join them now in bringing 1 million meals to New York. 1 million meals, believe it or not, to New Yorkers. FEMA and Secretary Napolitano could not have been more helpful. Now, we're not shy as New Yorkers, so I'm going to ask Madam Secretary, even with all you've done, we would like to see FEMA reimburse New York at 100% of New York's costs, because this burden, given our other burdens, is too much for us to carry. I also applaud the local elected officials. We've been working very closely with the county executives of Nassau, Suffolk, and Westchester. We were with County Executive Mangano and Steve Ballone and Rob Astorino from Westchester. And the entire team has worked together. It's functioning. Otherwise, this situation would have been much worse. And that is especially true with the mayor of New York City, Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who has been a great partner to me and to the senators, our federal partners. His team is a professional team. And they have been masterful in handling this operation. And I really believe if it wasn't for the mayor and his leadership, this situation would have been much, much worse for the city of New York. And every New Yorker is grateful for his leadership at this time. Thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Mike Bloomberg.
Governor, thank you for those kind words. As Henry Kissinger would say, they have the added advantage of being true. That's funny, Kirsten. You're supposed to be laughing. Way to go. I wanted to start out by thanking Joe and Madam Secretary and particularly the governor for helping us prepare for and then deal with and recover from a terrible storm. We expected a devastating storm. We prepared for a devastating storm, and we got a devastating storm, maybe the worst in our city's entire history. Recovering from it is not going to be easy, but by working together, we will recover and we will rebuild our city stronger than ever. The city, state, and federal governments have been working as close together as I've seen in my 11-odd years in public service. The governor really has delivered. He's been accessible. His staff has been accessible, and so has all of the federal agencies, Madam Secretary. You can thank all of them for me. We've gotten your full support, and we deeply appreciate it. And as bad as the damage is, and it's hard to imagine that it could be worse, if the MTA had not shut down the subways and buses and closed the tunnels, the recovery period would have been much, much longer and much, much more costly. It goes to show that if you take precautions, you can benefit from them. The MTA really has been some of the heroes here. They've done a phenomenal job getting some of the subway service already restored, and between the governor and Joe Loader and all of their staffs, I have high expectations that sometime over the next few days, everything's going to be back in terms of mass transit. Maybe the tunnels will take a little while longer, but the mass transit part is the most important part to us. That and having electricity back. In addition to the support we've gotten from the federal government, we've got a great deal of support from the state. And Shelley, I wanted to say thank you to you and to all of the Senate and Assembly for what you've done. And the Department of Homeland Security, and it has been the principal responder here. FEMA has been great partners with our city. FEMA has been on the phone with us offering services from long before the disaster struck right through it, and it continues today. The Department of Housing and Urban Development has also offered us a lot of support, and we're going to continue to need the support from these federal agencies in the days and weeks ahead. They recognize that this is a major natural disaster and that recovery deserves and requires a national response. And they have been working with us every step of the way, President Obama and the Secretary and all of the agencies. In working with the federal government on the recovery, we couldn't ask for two better partners than our local senators, Senator Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand. Their leadership really has been crucial to ensuring that we're fully able to capitalize on federal programs. And Jerry, I wanted to thank you for everything that Congress does for us as well. You've always been a big supporter of the city and fought for us. Every once in a while you do things that I think are wrong, but I've always respected your right to be wrong, and I'll continue to do so. Seriously, Jerry Nadler is a big supporter of this city. This has been a united effort from the start, and we'll continue to work closely together to ensure that the recovery happens first as safely as possible and then as quickly as possible. Bringing our city back is a big job, and everybody's got a role to play. We have a lot of hard work ahead of us, but New Yorkers, as Andrew said, are resilient. We look to the future, and what we have to do is, in memory of those that we've lost, make sure that we build as quickly as we can, as safely as we can, and have a future for those they left behind. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the Secretary who has delivered the bacon for us, if you'll pardon that expression. She is a former governor of the great state of Arizona. We've known each other from those days. She's been there for us as every time we've made a phone call. Madam Secretary?
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mayor. Governor, as a former governor myself, I think I can really empathize with the job that you are doing, and it's not only New York City, but throughout the state where the damage was so severe. Mayor, I know you've got this and are working and making sure that the residents of this great city can be confident that this recovery will be as speedy and as efficient as possible. Senators Schumer and Gillibrand really appreciate the support. Those of you should know that these are regular correspondents with me and have been on the phone with me several times since landfall of this hurricane. Representative Nadler, Speaker Silver, also. Everybody's really involved. So what does that mean? Well, it means a couple of things. Number one, the president has declared a number of counties in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut disaster areas, and that means that individuals can begin applying for assistance for things like temporary housing, for things, and communities can apply for emergency protective measures they have had to take. You can go to disasterassistance.gov. You can go to FEMA.gov. There's also a 1-800 number that I can't read because it's reflecting off of my iPad, but there is a 1-800 number. In addition,
621-3362.
All right, thank you, Senator. We have had actually, since we've turned on the 8 clock or the assistance clock, more than 36,000 individuals have already signed up. We want to make it as easy and as convenient for people to do this as possible. We know some people don't have phones or access to the internet right now. We literally have hundreds of teams now walking through areas that have been affected, knocking on doors, finding people, making sure they know what kind of assistance they qualify for. In addition, we have opened disaster recovery centers here. We're going to open up 5 more on Monday. Those will be places that will be open so that people can come in and get advice and counsel and support and figuring out what it is they're entitled to as they begin rebuilding their own lives. With respect to other resources that are coming, literally thousands of FEMA people are on the ground now in New York and in other states affected by Hurricane Sandy. We have also put in hundreds of housing inspectors. They were pre-positioned right outside the storm area, coming in now already doing damage assessments for people who need to rebuild their homes so that we can get that done as quickly as possible. We know that energy is key. The President has repeated this to us many times. And for energy to recover, we are supporting the utilities and also bringing in generators by the dozens to assist while the grid is being worked so it can come back. Now the generators need fuel. The Coast Guard has been working to open up the harbor here and other harbors along the path of the storm so that fuel can begin to move to terminals and then hence from terminals to distribution places, gas stations and the like. That process is underway right now. And we will continue to increase that over the coming days. With respect to power lines, we're bringing in crews, and the utilities have identified, literally from all over the country, there are crews in New York now from states like Mississippi, from states like California. The Department of Defense has put its resources at our disposal so that crews and their equipment can be moved into this area. As we speak, there are 60 crews with their equipment on a I think it's a C-130, on their way to this area so that we can speed up the process of getting those power lines back up, get the grid working, and as I said before, making sure there are generators and fuel in the interim. I just want to close by saying there are some things that I think we all want to keep in mind. Big storm. New York is a very strong, resilient state. You've got great leadership here. City has great leadership. It's very resilient. We want to help get things back to normal as quickly as possible. Schools open, stores open. We know people, some experience, sadly, loss of life in their families, among their friends and colleagues. We can't bring them back. But what we can do is work together to bring the communities back. And that is our commitment here. So DHS, which includes, by the way, as part of the department, includes FEMA and the Coast Guard. Coast Guard had the lead on search and rescue, still does, out of this storm. FEMA has the lead on coordinating the disaster response at the federal level, working as well with the state and the city. We are going to be here through the pendency of not just the response, but now the recovery. And I think, as Mayor Bloomberg said, we anticipate coming back stronger than ever. Thank you. And let me now introduce the senior senator from the state of New York, Senator Schumer.
Well, thank you, and it's great to be here, and I want to thank Secretary Napolitano for her steadfastness, as well as my colleagues in government who have already been mentioned. Now, I'd like to make a couple of points here. First, on FEMA reimbursement. As you know, we have asked that it be 100%, not the 75% that is the minimum requirement. Well, I'm pleased to say that this morning I received word that FEMA is going to reimburse New York City and New York State 100% for the cost of emergency transportation. Yes. FEMA will also cover.
Yes, thank you very much.
FEMA will also cover the cost to restore power to the region between October 30th and November 9th. Now, this is certainly not everything we need, but it's a very good first step, and it is an indication that the President Secretary Napolitano know how serious this is, and so that is a very good sign for us. This was not a New York disaster, a New Jersey disaster, or Connecticut disaster. It's a national disaster. And FEMA should be providing help to the region to the full extent they can. We'll continue to push the feds to reimburse the city and New York State with all the costs associated with the storm. And we want 100%. We've asked for 90 or even 100 the whole way for everything that can be done that has been done in major storms before, because these damages could cost billions of dollars. They put a huge burden not only on large cities like New York, but smaller towns and villages. They're very essential. On the port, Secretary Napolitano mentioned something I'd like to elaborate. As I traveled around the state, around the metropolitan area Tuesday, Wednesday, I saw huge lines at gas stations. There are huge lines in Staten Island, in Nassau County, in Brooklyn, and in Queens. Why? There's a shortage of gasoline. First, people are using their cars because there's no mass transit. Second, the generators that people need as for auxiliary power use gasoline. And when we looked into it, there were several problems, but one of which was that our port was closed with good reason. The Admiral had closed the port for safety reasons. We called, we talked to the Coast Guard on several occasions, and now they have gotten all the buoys that mark the safe channels in place. They have gone through the channels where boats go through, so the harbor is open for ships to pass through. Yes, sir. And that will mean that our gasoline crisis should end shortly. These boats and ships, tankers, will be able to go through, they'll be able to land, they'll be able to unload their gasoline loads onto trucks, which will go to the gas stations that people need. So that is good news as well, and another way that the federal government, and particularly Secretary Napolitano and her agencies, are helping. We also have disaster centers from FEMA. I want to elaborate on these since we're getting lots of questions. We were just on Staten Island, Senator Gillibrand and I, lots of questions. The centers are mobile units. They're staffed by people from FEMA, SBA, and the Red Cross. They'll answer your questions about disaster recovery. They're communications vehicles where sides unfold, of the unit unfold, and serve as computer stations where people can actually go online and get assistance. Many residents don't have access to cell phones, so these stations are very, very important right now, and people are anguished about FEMA coming so they know what they can expect. It's very, very important, and we're glad that they're doing that. In addition to the mobile recovery, disaster recovery units, they're going to mobilize what they call community relation teams, FEMA workers who will wear blue shirts with FEMA written on it, and they will go door to door and canvass in neighborhoods like Staten Island that have been hard hit by Sandy and where people have no way to communicate because the cell phones are out, the electricity is out, everything is out, to let people know. In conclusion, I want to give two thoughts about this crisis, a bad and a good. The bad. This is probably the greatest natural disaster ever to hit New York. It's probably one of the 5 greatest to hit the country. It's just incredible. And when you go by helicopter, you see the breadth of it, how widespread, how many different kinds of tragedies there are, how many people are hurting in so many different ways. It is just astounding. Then when you go on the ground and you meet individual people, a lady was crying in my arms this morning on Staten Island because she had no food, no clothes, no house, no anything. You see the depth of it. When you multiply how broad this tragedy is and how deep it is in terms of affecting people's lives, it just ties one big knot in your stomach. And that's how I feel right now, having been traveling for the last 3 days and continuing to do that. What's the good news? Well, I was shaking hands with people who were online at the Barclays Center to go off from the subways onto the buses. And I think the MTA did a very good job there. Were they happy about it? No. But they were strong, they were tough, They were resilient. They were New Yorkers who knew we would overcome the tragedy, and frankly, we're glad with all the hassle and change that at least they could begin to get back to work. The best thing we got going for us amidst this God-wrought disaster are New Yorkers. We will not only survive, we will prevail. We did after 9/11, and now we see Freedom Tower rising behind us, and we will after the horrible hurricane, the horrible Storm Sandy. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce my partner in government, and we work very hard and very closely together for New York, and we're doing it more than ever during this storm, Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Senator Schumer. Thank you for outlining what we can be doing on the federal level to be helping families across New York. I want to thank Secretary Napolitano for her leadership, her dedication, the fact that she came here to tour on the ground to see what New York is suffering. That shows great leadership, and thank you for that. I also want to commend President Obama for his ability to outreach and to make sure that the government is working as it should to get rid of the red tape, to make things seamless and streamlined, to get resources into our state and into our communities. The fact that FEMA has these centers being mobilized across our state is so important to our families. But the reality is families have been hit very, very hard. When Senator Schumer and I were on Staten Island this morning, I could tell you, lives have been shattered. People have died, homes are destroyed, businesses are in rubble. But one man who was in the process of working on his business, it was on the waterfront, and there were boats literally on the roads. He said, "Listen, I'm from here. We're gonna rebuild it, and we're gonna rebuild it better." And he had every bit of confidence that he would make a difference. So I just want to conclude by saying, New Yorkers can handle this. They will build from this. We will build it better, and we will be stronger. I'd like to now introduce Jerry Nadler, our very important congressman from this region, who has been an unbelievable advocate for our middle-class families, our struggling families, and for this community particularly.
Well, thank you very much, Senator. Let me begin by thanking the President and Secretary Napolitano for the aid they have given to New York and to the other states in this region, and our two senators for the work they've done, and the mayor, and of course Joe Lota, who's been fantastic in getting the MTA to begin to recover from this. I don't have too much to add about what's been said. I have two comments. One, thank God we have a fully funded FEMA.
Yes.
And a FEMA that can operate, the Department of Homeland Security that can operate, and that has the funds, at least for the time being, to continue to do what has to be done. All of the assistance that we are getting to get people back on their feet, to get this region on their feet, would not be possible if FEMA weren't funded the way it is, if some other proposals had been adopted in the last year or two or three. And we should learn from that lesson, obviously. We're going to need more, and that will handle us now, but we're going to need help from Congress, and I'm sure that senators and Congress members from New York and from New Jersey and all the other states affected are going to unite and ask for the additional help that this region will need to recover from this disaster. The second thing I want to say is we should learn from this disaster. I think the governor said that these are going to happen more often, that the 100-year storms, given the climate change, given the fact that the waters are warming up, are going to happen maybe every 4 or 5 years. And we have to learn so that this kind of disaster doesn't happen the next time there's a storm of this magnitude, because there will be a storm of this magnitude again. We, as the governor said, this city grew up because of its harbor, because of its location, but we have to now protect ourselves from it. We're going to have to study very carefully how to, in effect, fortify the city for the future, how to make sure that next time there's a 14-foot surge, Lower Manhattan is not flooded, that the subways are not flooded, that a Con Ed substation can be a fortress, and the fact that it's flooded doesn't throw 250,000 people out of power. That's going to cost money. It's going to cost a lot of money, but a lot less money than a few more disasters of this magnitude. So I hope we learn from this for the future. Right now, the attention and the work has to be to get people on their feet to recover from this, and everybody is working toward that. And again, I want to thank the President, the Secretary, and the Governor, and the Mayor, and for all they're doing. But we also have to learn for the future. Thank you. Am I supposed to introduce you?
Questions? No, Joe?
We're not going to do
Q&A? Yeah, we can do Q&A.
Okay, but hold on. For those people who need, I think, Secretary, you're going to stick around for Q&A? You want to, I think you've got other alternatives, things to do, and more important things to do in the area while we're here. While I'm here, I'd like everybody to understand the people who work here at the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, now the UL Carey Tunnel, deserve an enormous amount of credit, an enormous amount of thanks for what they've done already and what they always do. Over here, to my right, your left, is Jim Ferrara, who is president of MTA Bridges and Tunnels. Next to him is Jim Fortunato. Jim is our chief of operations with the 3 stars over there. Mark Mendy is the general manager right here of this facility. And for all you guys over here, I very much appreciate your help and thanks, and we'll be over to congratulate you in a second. Thank you. Get Senator Sawyer.
Questions for any of us? Sure. That's Loda.
Where are they going to put all the tunnel?
Where are they going to put all the water? Imagine back in the New York Bay, right? Yes, back in New York Bay, where it belongs. Yeah, again, it's a big job. There are 43 million gallons of water.
Just on one side.
On one side. Joe.
Yes, your expected completion date for
I'm sorry?
the tunnel. Expected ETA for pumping out the tunnel.
We're receiving from the federal government some super pumpers. Once we get here, the thing will be cleared out relatively quickly, but we're waiting for that material to come from the Army Corps of Engineers. Well, we need to evaluate it once the water is gone. I will tell you, the electrical is out. I'm worried about the electrical and other systems work. And then we'll go in and make sure that it's, after it's cleaned out, after its water is cleaned out and it's cleaned out and washed out, we'll go through the structural integrity there. And I believe that part will be done in a relatively quick fashion. There's water pressure from the outside. The fact that there's water in the inside, I'm not worried about that. But the systems work, the lighting, and the various other security-related measures that we have in there, I am worried about.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.